I have a pastor friend who likes to say that Jesus is about more than cotton ball lambs and sheep. She's a pastor in Seattle where religious affiliation is not a given like it tends to be here in the Midwest. Those who attend her church do so not out of tradition or obligation, but out of a deep yearning for spiritual connection and challenge, and a desire to figure out how their lives intersect with God's plan for peace and justice in the world. She's been an educator for many years and has great insight into our communal efforts at Christian education, and she comments on the typical Sunday school craft of gluing cotton balls onto construction paper, calling them sheep, and connecting this loosely to Jesus as our Good Shepherd. Now, this is a fine activity for preschool children on Sunday morning. Many of our churches do that, but many of our churches also have stunted their religious growth at cotton ball sheep, not venturing beyond the simplistic ideal that this gives them. Many are afraid to venture beyond the warm, fuzzy Jesus that the cotton ball sheep represent, or baby Jesus, if you will. Today's scripture is not one that will be welcomed by those who embrace Jesus only through cotton ball sheep. In this scripture that Ember just read, we hear Jesus, the one we like to refer to as the Prince of Peace, speaking about something that seems very unpeace-like to us. He says that he has come not to bring peace, but to bring division. The Gospel of Matthew, relating this same story, uses the word sword. Matthew 10:34 says, "Do not think I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." Aren't we supposed to be beating those into plowshares? Why would Jesus bring a sword instead of peace? Luke then relates an even more troubling discourse from Jesus. He says they will be divided. Father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and so on and so on. Houses will be divided against one another. Chaos will reign supreme. All of this from the man we call the Prince of Peace. So what does this mean for the modern church? And where do we go with this today? Well, to truly understand the wisdom of the passage, we first must understand the context in which it was written, in which Jesus was conducting his ministry. Jesus was Jewish, as were his disciples. They lived in a nation that had embraced peace, but at a cost of their integrity. Over the 1,200 years since Moses led them out of Egypt and into the Promised Land, the people of Israel had compromised much of their religious integrity for political expedience at one time or another. Their history was tragic, with one invader after another superimposing foreign agendas on them over the wisdom that God gave God's people. And by the time Jesus arrived on the scene, much of the socio-religious life of the Jewish people looked very much unlike the covenant and the relationship that God initiated with them 1,200 plus years earlier. The situation in Jesus' day was one of Roman conquest. The Roman Empire had conquered Israel several generations prior, but their conquest was more than just a typical physical oppression. The religious and cultural leaders of the day were complicit with that conquest. And compromising their religious ideals, they entered into a tenuous agreement with the Romans that brought a fictitious sense of peace to the country. The Romans would occupy and protect the country in exchange for money, tribute, other concessions. The Romans would allow the Israelites to worship God instead of Roman gods, but only if they worship God in a certain way, an economically advantageous way to the community. Religion and politics were inexorably intertwined in that world, and in order to make a political peace deal with the Romans, religion must be compromised. Think of it like the old protection racket that you hear about in movies about the mob. The mob comes in and smashes up your store, but if you pay them protection money, they'll keep your store safe from harm. But in doing so, they also make demands of your store. What you will sell, who you will sell it to, what hours you will keep, and what backroom meetings might occur. And perhaps you will even launder money or fence goods for them. Sure, there is peace, but at what cost? This was kind of the scene in Jesus' world. The temple ruling class had compromised God on many levels to achieve peace with the Roman Empire. There was even a statue of an eagle guarding the entrance to the newly reconstructed temple. An eagle, the symbol of Roman power. Even the temple, the authority of Rome, was looking down on them. Big Brother, keeping them safe. Remember that show? Or remember Big Brother, not the show. Remember Big Brother? I'm not talking about the TV show or the song by Kanye West. I'm talking about the character Big Brother in George Orwell's novel 1984. In that book, the character of Big Brother, which was not a real person but a personification of the ruling elite, is presented as a protector, one who brings peace and order to the masses by simply inviting themselves to submit to his will. Freedom is gone, but peace has been achieved, or so it is claimed. The cost of that peace was free will. In that same book, 1984, another branch of government is called the Ministry of Peace. The Ministry of Peace is, of course, in charge of the military and is conducting an ongoing war with a neighboring country. The stated purpose of the Ministry of Peace in the book, however, is not to bring an end to that war, but to use just the right amount of force to keep the equilibrium going. The motive behind this is stated in a book by Emmanuel Goldstein, and he talks about the theory of perpetual war. And he says if a country keeps itself at war, it will use all surplus resources to fight that war, keeping most citizens focused on a single task, thus preventing them from learning about the true nature of their society. Well, this is the peaceful society in which Jesus lived. And this is the peace that Jesus spoke against today in the passage that Emma read. A peace that allowed and required the Roman government and temple officials to thwart the covenant of love that God had entered into with God's people. That's not true peace at all. And this is what Jesus was speaking against in our scriptures today. The scripture that Ryan read, the section of Isaiah that we heard, was also speaking in this vein. Using poetic language, the author speaks in a metaphor. He likens the nation of Israel to a vineyard planted by God. God planted a vineyard with choice grapes in the ideal location, a fertile hill cleared of stones and debris. God built a watchtower in the center to protect it, and wine vats to process the fruits of the vineyard into select wine. But instead of choice grapes, the vineyard yielded garbage grapes, unfit for the production of anything, unfit for anything but to be trampled underfoot. Israel, in the time of Isaiah and the time of Jesus, took the goodness of God and compromised it in the name of a fictitious and fleeting peace. In both instances, that peace was short-lived, and Israel wound up being destroyed again. The vineyard was trampled underfoot. So what wisdom does this hold for us today? As I describe the world that Jesus lived in, I have to notice that it's not much different than the world we live in. We also have compromised much to achieve a sense of peace that might be counter to what God intended for our lives. Is there any wonder why Jesus speaks the way he does this morning? So here is where Jesus' message for today comes into play. It is up to Jesus' followers to bring it. In times where God's message has been compromised by expedience, it's up to Jesus' followers to bring it. In times where God's command to love has been compromised by fear, it's up to Jesus' followers to bring it. In times where God's wisdom shared with us to love one another, even as Jesus first loved us, is compromised by nationalism and greed, it's up to Jesus' followers to bring it. We must bring division when it means standing up for Jesus. We cannot have true peace if we have it because we compromise the wisdom and the standards that Jesus has set for us. We cannot be true to God's call when we let the Roman system of oppression roll over God's precious children, no matter who they are. We must stand up for justice, even when it means division. You've probably heard the quote, "No one is free when others are oppressed." Many people attribute this to Mahatma Gandhi, but I've heard that he really did not actually say that. But it is true, however. Everyone, until everyone is free, nobody is truly free. Peace does not truly exist. When peace comes only because we hide behind our particular privileges, that's really not true peace. We don't know peace until all of God's children know peace. So that's grand to talk about peace on this global, national scale. But what does that mean for each one of us in our lives every day? How can we, in our everyday walk of life, embody the wisdom that Jesus shared with us this morning? How can we, in our everyday lives, tend the vineyard God planted to produce choice grapes instead of garbage? Well, both of these passages are like that map you see in the mall when you want to locate a certain store. The map says you are here with a little icon indicating where you're standing. But think about where you are when you look at that map. You're really nowhere. You're in the middle of the hallway. Not a place designed to stay. Not a place for comfort. You have a desire to be somewhere else. You're trying to figure out how to get there. You are here, but where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you have to do when you get there? The choices we make every day to not stand up for God, to take the easy path, to allow a fictitious peace to exist because we are too intimidated to stand up for the authenticity of God's message. These small-scale decisions are what lead us to the place where we are going, a peaceless society. Society is constructed by the priorities of people who live in it. And when our priorities are everything that is other than God, that's the society we'll live in. But Jesus has something to say about those priorities. Jesus brings much more to the world than just cotton ball sheep. Jesus also brings fire and division. The wisdom of Jesus has two purposes. Well, it has many purposes. I'm going to talk about two. To comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. Today, we've all been afflicted in our comfort.